Steve Sarkisian has done it again. The Texas Longhorns have themselves another new defensive lineman. We'll give you the details coming up on today's episode. This is Locked On Longhorns. Intro.
You are Locked On Longhorns, your daily podcast on the Texas Longhorns. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in. You are locked on to the Texas Longhorns. I'm your host, BK Brad Kellner, Texas grad, Austin native, and longtime sports radio host here in the Lone Star State. Thank you for making Locked On Longhorns a part of your day every single day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube as well. Please like, subscribe, leave a comment, and tell your Longhorn friends about Locked On, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Texas has been putting in work in the transfer portal. Before today, the Longhorns had already added 4 players in the spring window, and, well, they have just added a 5th. Breaking news within the last hour. Syracuse transfer defensive lineman Marada Watson has committed to Texas. That is the 5th spring portal pickup for the Longhorns. Also the 5th defensive lineman added from the portal this offseason for Texas football. As of this morning, the Longhorns had 2 available scholarship spots. Now they have 1. And funny enough, I actually recorded today's episode, finished up, refreshed Twitter, and then all of a sudden, Marada Watson has committed. So let's go ahead and start over, record something new. And this is worth recording. Last week we talked about Texas potentially being in the market for 2 defensive linemen. Even though they added 3 in the winter portal window, it was clear the Longhorns still were looking for more help. They added Maryland transfer Levon Johnson last Friday, and that wasn't enough because they go out and bring in Marada Watson today. Watson is here in Austin right now. He arrived last night for a visit. He was on campus today, and whatever Texas did and whatever Texas told him was enough to get that commitment. And obviously that was the goal, right? You wanted the Longhorns to say what they needed to say and do what they needed to do to make sure that Marada Watson didn't go visit anywhere else, because this is a guy that was getting all sorts of interest around the country. He was the number 1 remaining defensive lineman in the portal. I saw a report over the weekend that said Ohio State, Georgia, Tennessee, Miami, and South Carolina were all interested in Marada Watson. Those are some big-time programs right there, and those are some programs with some money to spend and some resources at their disposal. So it was huge that Texas got the first visit, and you wanted the Longhorns, again, to do enough during this visit to convince Marada Watson to put pen to paper while he was here. And it sounds like that is what just happened. Watson was a freshman All-American this past season at Syracuse, totaled 31 tackles and 1 sack for the Orange in 2024. And, man, Texas just continues to dominate the portal. It was a relatively underwhelming winter portal class for Texas. Yeah, they brought in 5 transfers, but I think it was a class that ranked outside of the top 60 in terms of transfer portal rankings. And that's a little unexpected for Texas. Some teams out there would be happy with a top 65 class, but the Longhorns brought in a top 5 transfer class last year, and the portal has been a huge part of their success over these last 2 seasons and making it to back-to-back college football playoff semifinals. It was a little peculiar and interesting to see the Longhorns just be kind of inactive back during the winter portal window. Well, they have ramped up the activity here in the spring, and this is a huge get. The icing on the cake for what was already a very impressive defensive line class that Texas brought in from the portal. But now you bring in Marada Watson, again, a freshman All-American last season, and a guy who still has a ton of upside. Like, he has to play college football for at least 2 more years, and he has 3 years of remaining eligibility. So he's a guy that not only will help your team in 2025, but a guy who can help out in 2026 and 2027 and maybe 2028 as well, getting to learn under the tutelage of Kenny Baker, who had a fantastic first season as the defensive line coach at the University of Texas. This is a great pickup for the Longhorns. Again, a guy in a major conference who performed really, really well. I mean, Marada Watson had 493 snaps as a freshman for Syracuse this past season. As a point of reference, the aforementioned Levon Johnson, who Texas just brought in from Maryland last week, he had, I think, 260 snaps in 2 seasons combined at Maryland. In just 1 season up at Syracuse, again, 493 snaps from Marada Watson. I don't care that it's Syracuse. It's not easy as a freshman to play that much, and this guy was an impactful force for the Q's defense. I was watching the Locked On Syracuse podcast yesterday, and they're not happy about Marada Watson leaving via the portal. That's a good thing. When you see the other team's fan base pissed that their guy is leaving, that usually means he's a really good player because they're mad for a reason. So sorry about that, Locked On Syracuse Nation. But thank you very much for Marada Watson. Watson, 6'3", 313 pounds. Pro Football Focus last year gave him a 65.1 defensive grade. His run defense grade was 77.4. So that was the strength of Watson's game in 2024. And that's what the Longhorns need this coming season, right? You think about what Texas has been able to do defensively in each of the past 2 years. They have been one of the best run defenses in the sport in both 2023 and 2024. Texas has lost so much at defensive tackle with Murphy and Sweat and Collins and Broughton and, of course, Bill Norton all going to the NFL in these last 2 drafts. The Longhorns needed to make sure that their run defense wasn't going to take some big step back despite that mass exodus of mass and talent. And it was clear that refilling that defensive line room was a massive, massive priority for Texas in the off season. So, man, this is a great, great pickup for Texas. I was worried this was going to be a recruitment that dragged out for a couple of days, if not a couple of weeks. Remember, the transfer portal window closes on Friday, but that only means you can't enter the portal after Friday. As long as you're in the portal before the 25th, you can commit well after this Friday. So I was worried that, all right, Watson's going to go visit a bunch of different schools and he's going to drag this thing out a little bit, maybe turn this into a bidding war to see how much he can get from a bunch of different schools. That was my fear, but Texas quelled those fears very, very quickly. And again, can't say enough about the job that the Longhorns have done in the transfer portal all around, but especially on defensive line. I mean, looking at the returning interior D linemen before the portal additions, it was Alex January and Melvin Hills III. That was it. I mean, Texas had 4 players transfer out: Jere Bledsoe, Sadir Mitchell, Tia Savea, Aaron Bryant. All of those dudes portaled, so they're gone. We mentioned Alfred Collins, Vernon Broughton, and Bill Norton. They're all headed to the league. So Texas was very short-handed. Now the Horns have 3 early enrollee freshmen on campus, including the 5-star Justice Terry, but this is a win-now team. You don't want to have to rely on true freshmen to help you win now. Whatever you get from Justice Terry and Myron Charles and Josiah Sharma, all great. Hopefully those guys do enough to force their way into the defensive tackle rotation when we get to the fall. But again, you don't want to have to bank on those guys being good for your team to be good. So it was imperative for the Longhorns to go out and find as much help as they could get. And again, not 1, not 2, not 3, not 4, but 5 defensive lineman additions for Texas. The Horns were already in a good spot before today's dues. Now they are in a great spot on the defensive line. I don't know if it'll be as good as what you had with Sweat and Murphy in 23 or what you just had in 2024. But realistically speaking, this is about as good of a job that Texas could have done to restock the defensive tackle spot. I mean, you're loaded on edge. You've got great linebackers, of course, headlined by Anthony Hill. This secondary, Steve Sarkisian called it maybe the best and deepest position group on the team last week. Loaded with talent there. The biggest question, without question, was the teeth of the Texas defensive front. And again, Cole Brevard from Purdue, Travis Shaw from North Carolina, Hero Kanu from Ohio State, Levon Johnson from Maryland, now Marada Watson from Syracuse. 5 players, all from major programs, or at least power conference programs. I don't know if Maryland and Syracuse qualify as major programs. Sorry about that, fans of those 2 schools. But guys who have played in the Big Ten and the ACC, they know what it's like to go up against good competition. So the jump up to the SEC shouldn't be too much for any of them to handle. But man, what's a great piece of news for the Longhorns. Can't say enough about the job that Sark continues to do, just building a competitive roster. You're seeing talent acquisition, you're seeing talent development, you're seeing all sorts of great things if you're a fan of the Texas Longhorns, and this is more of the same. Love this pickup for the Longhorns. Excited about Marada Watson coming to Austin. All right, let's shift gears here. We're in the final week of Texas spring football. We've got some insider nuggets from these last few days of practice, including an update on Arch Manning. We'll bring it to you next, right here on Locked On Longhorns. But first, a word for our friends at Game Time. There is nothing like the atmosphere of an NBA playoff game. Every bucket, every defensive stop, every moment feels huge. It is electric in the arena. And with Game Time, you could be a part of it without the stress of last-minute ticket hunting. That can be a pain in the you-know-what. Game Time takes all of the pain out of it. They make it fast and easy to get your playoff tickets, even when the demand is sky high. The best part, prices on the app actually go down the closer you get to tip-off. Their last-minute deals can save you up to 60%. And it's not just NBA playoffs. It's every sport. It's concerts. It's comedy shows. It's theater. You've got it. And their all-in pricing means you won't get hit with surprise fees at checkout. What you see is what you pay. So take all the guesswork out of buying tickets with our friends at Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the promo code LOCKEDONCollege, and you're going to get $20 off your first purchase just like that. Terms apply. Again, create an account on the Game Time app and use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Welcome back to Locked On Longhorns, your team every day. 13 practices down, 2 to go for Texas football this spring. The Longhorns held practice number 13 this morning. They will hold number 14 on Thursday and then wrap things up Saturday morning with the 15th and final practice before Fan Day festivities take place outside of DKR. So that's it. One final week. Steve Sarkisian's meeting with the media today. We'll have some sound from him on tomorrow's show. But on today's episode, we've got a few insider notes regarding the Texas offense. Credit to our friends at On Texas Football for most of these. And we're going to start with the quarterback position. Arch Manning, the clear number 1. Trey Owens, the clear number 2 right now. No surprises there. We all know Arch is QB1. And I'm excited about what KJ Lacey can do. But of course, Trey Owens, the incumbent, he was here last year. KJ Lacey is, an early enrollee freshman. So no surprise that the depth chart looks like Arch Manning 1, Trey Owens 2, KJ Lacey number 3. According to this report, Arch Manning has been far from perfect. He's had his ups and downs. However, the thing that keeps being recounted is that he is considered a team leader that is commanding the offense. If there's ever a bad series or a bad couple of plays, and even if it's on him, he and the offensive linemen are the ones getting the guys back together. We've talked about Arch Manning's leadership a lot. He has those natural leadership traits, and it sounds like they've been on full display here in his first spring practice as the Longhorns starting quarterback. Look, I would love to read and I would love to tell y'all that Arch Manning has looked perfect and it's been nothing but highs in these first 13 spring practices, but let's be realistic here. We're talking about a first-year, first-time starter in a very complicated offense. And, oh, by the way, Arch Manning is a little short-handed right now. Of course, Texas lost a bunch of weapons from last year's offense, but even the guys who are going to be here in the fall aren't here right now. C.J. Baxter's not here. Ryan Wingo is hurt. DeAndre Moore is hurt. Jordan Washington is hurt. So a lot of the top guys at the skill positions on this Longhorn offense aren't there. Of course, Texas breaking in 4 new offensive line starters as well. So I think everybody's probably going through their bumps and bruises here in the spring. The good news is you're more than 4 months away from the first game against another team. And again, Arch Manning continuing to show those leadership qualities. Growth as a leader has been a big part of his spring camp. And this is Arch's team now. We all know that. He's got to win over that locker room, and it sounds like he is doing a really good job of doing that. I think the on-field stuff will be good as well. And again, over the next 4 months and change, I think things will get cleaned up. Over to running back now. Trey Wisner remains this team's starter at running back. That's unsurprising considering he ran for 1,000 yards last season. But according to On Texas Football, he has taken another step. Love to hear that. I mean, Trey Wisner burst on the scene last year. Again, this was a guy who was not really highly touted as a recruit, just a 3-star. I think he was like the 27th or 28th ranked running back in his high school class. The fact that he's already done what he's done is incredibly impressive, but we keep hearing that he is getting better. Steve Sarkisian raved about Wisner last offseason. He's raved about him this offseason. Wisner got that single-digit number. So I feel like he's one of those guys that every few months, whenever we see him, he's going to be just a little bit better than what he was previously. Trey Wisner still your starting running back. Jarrett Gibson still your number 2 running back. He has held off the returning Christian Clark, who, of course, is coming off of that ACL injury. Jarrett Gibson, a.k.a. Baby Rhino, still your number 2 there, while C.J. Baxter is out. And James Simon. Keep hearing good things about James Simon, the true freshman early enrollee. According to On Texas Football, he has turned heads at times. Fall camp is going to be big to see if he can unseat Gibson or Clark to get into the rotation a little bit more, according to On Texas Football. Again, CJ Baxter, I don't know what to expect from him, but I know how good he was before he got hurt. I know how highly touted he was as a recruit. I know that this coaching staff had him as a starter ahead of Jonathan Brooks in his first ever collegiate game. So obviously Baxter C4 is going to factor into the rotation somehow, some way. We won't get the answer to that until we get to the fall. Moving over to tight end now. Spencer Shannon has been the clear number 1. According to On Texas Football, Shannon is a strong inline blocker and considered a very heady player, not heavy, heady. That being said, the injury to Jordan Washington exposed a real shortcoming at that position. Amari Winston has looked good catching the ball and making some route adjustments on the fly. His physicality is solid for his age, but he's still not quite ready to be an every down player for Texas. No surprise. Another early enrollee freshman. So that's why Texas went out and got Jack Endries. Simple as that. Even if Jordan Washington had been healthy all spring, I still think tight end would have been a huge position of need for Texas. Once Washington went down with that collarbone issue, you really knew Texas was shorthanded there. And I like hearing that Spencer Shannon's looking good. I like hearing that he is a smart player and could give you something in the blocking game. That means he's going to see the field because Sark and Jeff Banks love their tight ends who are multifaceted. You can't just be a pass catcher and get snaps as a tight end in this offense. I think that's why Amari Niblack isn't here. I don't think he was too thrilled with his role, and I don't think he got to play a lot because he wasn't as good of a blocker as Gunnar Helm or Juan Davis last season. You're going to need a blocking tight end. I think Jack Endries is okay at that, but Spencer Shannon at his size, 6'7", 240, 250, that's your guy who should be the best at that in that tight end room. But again, Endries is going to solve some of the problems that Texas might be having there. And then the offensive line, the starting 5 has been the starting 5 for a while. We've talked about this before. The biggest quote-unquote position battle up front has been at right tackle with the former 5-star Brandon Baker going up against Andre Kojo, who has been on campus for an extra year. That's sort of the battle, and Kojo apparently has been rotating with the ones every so often. That's the only sort of mini rotation that Texas has on the offensive line right now. It sounds like Brandon Baker's getting the majority of the snaps with the ones, but Kojo at least is getting a few, and he is the only guy on the offensive line, or at least that's the only spot on the offensive line where that's the case. Nate Kibble, Jaden Chapman, Connor Robertson, Nick Brooks, and Andre Kojo have kind of been your predominant number 2s with the offensive line. And last but not least, wide receiver, Parker Livingston. He continues to be the talk of camp. I don't care who you talk to, what player you talk to, whatever Steve Sarkisian has to say, the insider sites that you look at, it has been a consensus that Parker Livingston has been the biggest standout in that wide receiver room. He has made the most of his opportunities with some of those injuries at that spot. And that dude is going to force his way on the field. Obviously, Emmett Mosley, the fifth, the transfer is not here yet. I wonder his role in the Texas offense. You know he's going to have one. Does he get that third starting spot at wide receiver? Or does he have to beat out Parker Livingston for that position? I think we all know that Wingo and Moore are two of your starters, but Sark runs a lot of 11 personnel. You get a lot of 3 receiver sets. Who is going to be that number 3? Will it be Mosley? It's because of what he did last year at Stanford? Or will Parker Livingston, who's been a part of this offense, this is not the easiest offense to learn. Mosley doesn't have the spring to learn it. Will it be Livingston, who's been here for a couple of years, who knows the offense and who has built up that chemistry with Arch Manning? Will he be the guy? Again, not a question we'll have an answer to until we get to the fall. But, Livingston, again, tip of the cap to you, sir, for what you have done. Every single insider article that talks about Texas spring football has talked about Parker Livingston. It's a good sign right there. Up and down moments for the freshmen throughout camp. No surprise, those guys are still getting acclimated. But that wide receiver position will hopefully continue to be a strength for the Longhorns in 2025. And there you go. Some offensive, not offensive, hopefully, insider notes from Texas spring practice, 13/15 of the way through. I don't know if that simplifies. I don't really care. We're shifting gears here. Let's talk a little Texas baseball. Come on, the Longhorns are number 1 in the country. After all, they deserve their own segment. The Horns are out for revenge tonight against Texas State. Will Texas take care of business against the Bobcats, or is this another trap game for UT? We will discuss coming up next right here on Locked On Longhorns. But first, how about a word from our friends at Prize Picks? There we go. Baseball season is in full swing, and there is no better way to get in on the action than with Prize Picks, the best place to play daily fantasy sports. With Prize Picks, you pick more or less on at least 2 player projections. If you're right, you can win up to 1,000 times your cash. Whether it's strikeouts, RBIs, first inning runs, it doesn't matter. Prize Picks keeps every game exciting. You can build your lineup with superstars. If you want Shohei, if you want Aaron Judge, boom, you can get those dudes. If you just want to bet the Astros or the Rangers, your favorite team, whoever your favorite team is, you can pick all of those players. Setting a lineup is fast. It's easy. It takes less than 60 seconds. It's super easy and so much fun. Download the app today and use the code LOCKEDONCollege to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Again, that's code LOCKEDONCollege for $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. It's Prize Picks. Run your game. Run your game. Welcome back to Locked On Longhorns, your team every day. Texas baseball back at it tonight before we preview the Longhorns game against Texas State. No surprise, yesterday, the Longhorns were once again ranked as the number 1 team in the land in all 3 major college baseball polls. They were number 1 unanimously. Last week, they went 4-0, including a sweep over a top 10 Auburn team. No controversy there. Texas stays at the top. Quick shout out to Kimball Schuessler. He was named SEC Co-Player of the Week. 8 for 12, 3 home runs, 10 RBIs in the week. The game-winning home run in the 7th inning of the series opener against Auburn, and then the walk-off homer to run-rule Auburn in the finale on Saturday. Kimball Schuessler has been amazing as of late. He earned that award, and he split it with A&M outfielder Jace Laviolette. He needed another wrinkle to this huge series coming up. I think that's pretty ironic that a Longhorn and an Aggie split the Co-Player of the Week award the week before these two teams meet. Laviolette had 5 home runs against Arkansas, so he earned that honor as well. But congrats to Kimball Schuessler. We're talking more about the Longhorns here. Texas at Texas State tonight. The Horns are looking for some revenge. Texas State beat Texas here in Austin back on April 1st. It was not an April Fool's joke, unfortunately. 5-3 was the final. Texas actually led 2-1 going into the 8th inning, but the Horns gave up 4 runs in the top of the 8th. Awful, awful defense. All 4 runs were unearned. Texas was only credited with 1 error. Maybe I should say charged with 1 error that inning, but the official score was being very nice. Texas made 2 or 3 horrible plays defensively that allowed Texas State to come from behind and take the lead and ultimately win that game. Bobcats scored all 4 of those runs in that 8th inning with 2 outs. Very frustrating performance for the Longhorns. And Texas State, the little stepbrother or the little cousin, whatever you want to call them, down I-35, they came into your ballpark and beat you. So Texas looking to serve some revenge at Bobcat Ballpark tonight. The hope is Texas takes care of business. Texas is the better team here, but you got to wonder in a game like this, how much will the Longhorns care? Like, this is Texas State's Super Bowl. It's going to be a packed house tonight. It's going to be a raucous crowd in San Marcos. Texas obviously wants to win. You never don't want to win. And there's extra motivation because of what happened in Austin. But we all know it's coming up this weekend, right? Biggest series of the season, biggest series of the last few seasons. And that's saying something considering Texas has already hosted 3 top 10 teams at the Dish here in 2025. But A&M in town, that's the biggest college baseball series this year. Like, you'll get bigger games and bigger moments in the postseason. But in terms of the regular season, there is no more anticipated matchup, not just in the state, not just in the conference, but in the country, than the Lone Star Showdown between the Longhorns and the Aggies. So you wonder if Texas is going to be looking ahead. I mean, Jim Schlossnagle talked about it yesterday. He said Texas isn't even bringing some of its best arms to San Marcos for this game tonight. Like, they're ramping up for the weekend. So again, Texas has enough talent. They should be able to beat this Texas State team even without throwing their best arms and maybe without using all of their best players. But you worry about that overlook factor. I don't think Schloss and Texas are shy. They know what's at stake this weekend. So we'll see. We'll also see if the injury to Longhorn ace Jared Spencer is going to impact pitching decisions tonight. You know, Spencer is your Friday night guy, so he wouldn't normally play on a Tuesday. But how do you shift the rotation with Spencer unlikely to be available against A&M? And it sounds like Ruger Riojas, the normal Sunday starter, will pitch on Friday this week, meaning Luke Harrison will stay in his normal Saturday spot. Does Cade Bing move to Sunday? Cade Bing's been your Tuesday guy. Does he get the night off to get a few extra days to prepare for Sunday? Or maybe he does a bullpen today, pitches an inning or two just to get some work. I don't know what Texas is going to do on Sunday. We might, we'll definitely get some clarity in this game tonight on who's available, who's unavailable. But I do wonder. I saw on TexasLonghorns.com that Grayson Saunier is the probable starter for Texas. So maybe that means that Cade Bing will be the guy on Sunday. I don't know just yet, but something to pay attention to. Texas 56-17 against Texas State all time. But recently, Texas State has held his own. The Longhorns have actually been better in San Marcos against the Staters than they have in Austin. So hopefully the Horns can find a way to get this one done tonight. But we all know what's at stake. Not trying to make any excuses for Texas. They should still go out and take care of business. But this is your classic trap situation for the Horns. I'm almost glad they lost the first game to Texas State because I think they'll be a little extra amped to make sure that they don't slip up tonight. You do not want to go 0-2 against Texas State. I know that's a solid program, and I know it's not an SEC game, and it's probably not going to impact where you end up in the postseason. You would still like to avoid going over against Texas State because there's a lot of those fans here in the Austin area. They will be talking some trash if they go 2-0. All right. That's tonight, 6 o'clock. We'll talk way more about that A&M series as the week moves along. That's going to do it, though, for today's episode. Appreciate y'all tuning in. Thank you, as always, for making Locked On Longhorns a part of your day. For your next listen, check out Locked On NFL Draft with Damian Parson and Keith Sanchez. The NFL Draft starts on Thursday. Get the latest rankings, rumors, and news every day. Find Locked On NFL Draft on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast. We'll have sound from Steve Sarkisian tomorrow. We'll have the latest rumors from the portal. We'll have Texas baseball and a heck of a lot more on tomorrow's show. If you made it this far, thank you very much. Please like, please share, please subscribe, please rate, please leave a comment. All of those great things. Can't thank y'all enough for your continued support of Locked On Longhorns. We will talk to y'all soon. Until then, horns up, mics off. See y'all next time. This is Locked On Longhorns.